Life is a mysterious thing. There's no roadmap or signs to help you along the way. Only examples of those who have walked the trail before you. Every experience will be different, and the outcomes are dictated by fate. But although you don't control the future, you do harness the ability to steer your life in either the right direction or the wrong direction. Some choose to walk on the dark side of life and succumb to the evils of the world, and some even wear it like a badge of honor. But what about those who choose to be a wolf in sheep's clothing? They're the most dangerous because their persona can be blinding, and until the veil is lifted, you're lost. Sadly, some masks don't come off until it's too late, and along their trail of deceit, they leave behind the remnants of pain and suffering. June 24th, 2006. The world would make way for Susanna Morales. She would be born in the city of Atlanta, located in Georgia, and was also the youngest of two other siblings. She would be raised in a household instilled with family values, and along with this traditional upbringing, she would become close with her family, very close. Susanna is described as a person who was very loving. She cared about others. But although she was a very loving person, she had no problem putting you in your place. She was feisty, but not misbehaved. She had a love for musical instruments. She played the piano. She sang. Anything that dealt with music, she was all in for it. In the year of 2022, Susanna Morales would be 16 years old and attending Meadow Creek High School. She was a student that was eager to learn, not only music, but her studies as well. And when she wasn't busy with that, she was a cheerleader. She was your average 16-year-old girl that was preparing to take on the world. July 26, 2022. It was a normal day for Susanna Morales. It was summertime, so no school. She didn't have many plans that day, but she was planning on visiting a friend. Around 6 p.m. on that day, Susanna would make her mother aware of her plans, and she would leave her home in Norcross, Georgia, and head to an apartment complex located shortly away. The name of the apartments that she was going to were the Sterling Glen Apartments, and this is where a friend lived. So, she heads off with every intention of coming back. Around 9:40 p.m. of that same night, Susanna would contact her mother via text message to let her know that she was on her way home. With the apartment complex being roughly a 10-minute walk away, when she doesn't return home by 10 p.m., her mother begins to worry. She would then try and contact her daughter by calling her, but she doesn't answer the phone. Time continues to elapse, and Susanna Morales doesn't come home that night. So around 9 a.m. of the next morning, the family would call the authorities to officially report her missing. Only the family was told that they needed to wait a full 48 hours before the paperwork could be filed. But to add insult to injury, at this point, the police were treating this case as if she was a runaway, but the family was adamant that this wasn't the case. They told the police that Susanna was a well-behaved girl. She wasn't defiant. Outside of hanging out with friends, she was a homebody. She didn't really go out much. So Susanna being a runaway was a thought that the family wasn't buying. So a frustrated Morales family would leave the station, and they would get to work on their own, not waiting for the authorities to leap into action. They would immediately begin making flyers of Susanna and going door to door, asking if anyone knew anything about Susanna. While talking to the local residents in the immediate area, the family would catch a break. They would run across a neighbor who was in possession of doorbell cameras, and these cameras vaguely caught a glimpse of Susanna walking past their home. She's seen walking towards her home, and then afterwards disappearing out of view. The camera footage would be captured at approximately 10:07 p.m. and the neighbor that captured this footage was only located a minute walk away from her actual residence, leaving the family to believe that whatever transpired happened directly after she left this camera's frame. With this newfound information, the family would collect a copy of this surveillance footage and they would take it to the police station. But once presenting the evidence, they didn't hop into action. In fact, they were still singing the same tune, that she most likely ran away, probably visiting a boy. And although at this time enough time had passed for an official report to be filed, they didn't feel like the police were taking it seriously. So they were still pounding the pavement themselves, trying to get the word out. It has now been days since Susanna has not returned home, and the only known sighting of her at this point were the sea of missing posters with her face upon them, titled "Missing." Last seen wearing light blue jeans, a yellow spaghetti strap shirt, and white Crocs. But these posters do little to help find her whereabouts. As the days continue to pass on, the family becomes even more worried. But although the mainstream media wasn't picking up her story, Telemundo News was, and they were actively pursuing her case. When the Spanish network started airing her story, in return, it would force the police's hand, and they would release a statement of their own. On August 29th of 2022, the authorities would release a statement to the public asking if anyone knew anything about her disappearance. But this release would come a full month after. And with so much time passing, by now, anything could have happened. And if something sinister did happen, the perpetrator could be thousands of miles away, maybe even out of the country. After the authorities released this statement on the mainstream media, it did generate tips, and every tip received was ran down not by the police, but by Susanna's family. They were driving across state lines, doing whatever it took to bring their daughter home. But sadly, none of these tips panned out. And although Susanna Morales has been missing for a full month at this point, the police were still entertaining the idea that she was no more than a runaway. August of 2022 would come and go, and then September. And by the beginning of October, Susanna still hadn't returned home. And by October 23rd of 2022, another event would occur in Norcross, Georgia. 25-year-old Selena Garcia would be reported missing, and the last time her family saw her was October 8th, when she told her family she was going to hang out with friends. But Selena Garcia never returned home, and these circumstances were oddly similar to that of Susanna Morales. With two women being missing from the same area, people couldn't help but wonder whether or not the cases were connected. But not only were the circumstances similar, but in this case, the police were singing the same tune, that she most likely ran away from her family to start a new life. She was probably tired of them and just wanted something new. No urgency on her case, and no push forward to find her.
Yeah, Selena Garcia's sister telling me that Selena is one of 7 siblings. She is the youngest child. I'm told that the family is extremely close and that Selena would never go days, weeks without talking to her sister. The family fears the worst.
He's got me looking quite bad. It's frustration of not knowing where she is, not knowing anything, you know? Like, all I ask sometimes is just, I just want to know where she's at so I can get her. Something happened in between the place that we got the camera footage from and our neighborhood, and that's like a minute apart. I can't even believe that she's gone because it's unreal. We feel her close. We don't feel her far away.
Right now, family in Gwinnett County is desperately searching for a missing teenager and hoping someone out there can help. She's been gone for more than a month, and we want to show you her picture. Take a look at your screen. This is 16-year-old Susanna Morales. Her family hopes that spreading the word about her disappearance will help bring her home.
How big is your love? Tell me, how high is your patience? What can I be saying?
The family says they saw her the morning of July 26, and that afternoon she went to a friend's home but never returned back to her house. As you can see here, she was last seen wearing a yellow tank top and light-colored jeans. Gwinnett County police say they have labeled the case as a runaway, but her family disagrees. They're now asking the public to be on the lookout in any way they can.
Time is steadily elapsing, and there have been no new leads generated in the case of Susanna Morales. And by January of 2023, the police would reach out to the family. But it wasn't the news that they were hoping for. The authorities were reaching out in order to collect a DNA sample of her, as well as her dental records, just in case. Although Susanna hadn't been found at that point, requesting those items was a rude awakening for the family, and it was telltale signs that the authorities thought she was deceased. They would collect those items, place them in their database, and the family would continue on with the search. February 26, 2023. A driver would be driving along Highway 316 when he would receive a phone call. He would pull over on the side of the highway in order to take this call. While he's on this call, he gets out of the car and he begins to walk around. He walks towards the tree line. But once he's past the trees, he spots something odd. At first glimpse, he thought he was looking at what looked like to be the remains of an animal. But upon further inspection, it was far from it. It would in fact be skeletal remains of a human. And after coming to this realization, he would immediately contact the authorities. Upon arriving on the scene, the authorities would in fact verify that these were human remains. They would block everything off and set up the crime scene investigation. Along with the remains would be recovered one item, a gun. But outside of that, there wasn't much found. It was just skeletal remains that were lacking the presence of clothes and no forensic evidence. Because due to the state of the body, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that whoever it was had been laying there for a while. The body found just outside of Highway 316 would in fact later be identified as 16-year-old Susanna Morales. An autopsy would conclude that she lost her life due to blunt force trauma. After the body of Susanna was found, the police would magically leap into action because after all, at this point, they had no choice. With the lack of forensic evidence, they go with the only thing they can, and that would be to try to trace the gun found at the scene. This gun did in fact have a serial number attached to it, and after tracing it, it would come back to a man, but not just any old man. This was a 22-year-old police officer who went by the name of Miles Bryant. But after finding out who actually owned the gun, they would hit a roadblock because it turns out the day after Susanna went missing, Miles Bryant reported this gun stolen. So at the time, they felt like they didn't have enough to bring him in. So they set up surveillance on this guy and began to watch him. While Miles Bryant was under surveillance, the authorities would return to the family and friends and try to make a connection between him and Susanna. But no one knew this guy, and a connection was never made. But the police would find out something odd. Miles Bryant actually lived in Sterling Glen Apartments, the same place that Susanna's friend lived, the one she was going to visit on the night she disappeared. With this newfound information, the police would draw up a warrant for his home, and they would search it and take out a few items, although they wouldn't disclose why they took the items or what the significance of them were. By March of 2023, the police felt like they had enough to indict him on murder. He is currently charged with the kidnapping and murder of Susanna Morales, and he's awaiting trial.
And tonight, former Doraville police officer Miles Bryant remains behind bars after a Gwinnett County Superior Court judge denied his latest request for bond.
What happened to Susanna Morales was completely tragic, but for her to lose her life by the hands of someone who was sworn to protect the people is a whole nother story. I truly hope that she receives the justice that she deserves. Rest in peace, Susanna Morales. Thank you for being a light for others.
Don't leave my heart down, it's the just let that dance go a little bit better when you're feeling. Oh, so won't you save me your location? Let's focus on communicating, 'cause I just need the time and things to come through. So won't you save me your location? Let's focus on communicating, 'cause I just need